The ruins shimmered beneath the twin suns of Ilion Prime, half buried in violet sand and time-worn silence. Teams from the Galactic Coalition scanned the structures with cautious reverence, whispering theories into recorders. They thought it was another precursor race, long extinct. Their language undeciphered, their architecture majestic, yet utterly alien. But something was wrong. Too symmetrical, too familiar, too human. Captain Elara Dorn stood at the edge of a broken archway, her boots sinking into the soft grit. Her visor flickered with data, and the pulse in her neck matched the rhythm of her narrowed eyes. She had seen this pattern before on Earth, buried in the catacombs beneath the Andes. The same 8-pointed star, the same spiral coating etched along the inner columns. "Get Professor Rain," she muttered into her come. Now, the lead archaeolinguist arrived a minute later, dust streaking his grizzled face, eyes squinting behind magnified lenses. "You found more of the glyphs?" "No," Elara said quietly. "Worse, I found writing. Real writing." He looked where she pointed. Carved on a shattered wall, half eroded and sun-bleached, was a line of ancient English, almost erased by time. "We tried to warn you. Earth is not the beginning." The professor staggered back, his hand over his mouth. "That's impossible." "No," she said, heart hammering. "That's human." Silence stretched around them like a vacuum. The rest of the team gradually clustered behind her, murmuring in disbelief. Some dismissed it as a prank, others fell into stunned awe. Elara's mind spiraled, fighting the dread climbing up her spine. This wasn't first contact. This was forgotten contact, hours later. Deep inside the central structure, an inverted pyramid beneath the sand, they uncovered the remains of a vault, sealed by some kind of biometric lock. Only humans could access it. When Elara pressed her palm to the reader, it hissed open like it had been waiting. Inside was darkness, cold, and a presence. A voice echoed through the chamber, not through speakers, but in their heads. It was male, it was calm, and it was familiar. "You've returned. Too late, perhaps, but you were always late, and always worth waiting for." The team froze. One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Cato, swallowed hard. "Is that AI?" "No AI could interface with our minds like this," said Rain. "This is something else." The chamber lights activated one by one, revealing rows of stasis pods, shattered and empty, ashes and bones. But all human, all ancient. "Why would humans be here?" Cato asked. "This place is thousands of light years from Earth." Elara knelt by a cracked pod and picked up a medallion. It bore the old Terran flag, one used before the collapse, before Earth was unified. But the alloy was wrong, too advanced. The dating would later reveal it to be 6 million years old. "That's not possible," Rain whispered. "Unless Earth isn't humanity's first home," Elara said. "Unless we're not the first version of us." A new sound echoed through the vault, footsteps, light and slow, but no one had moved. They turned in the far corner. A figure stepped from the shadows. Not a machine, not a projection. A man, young, pale, wearing a uniform none of them recognized, but still terribly Terran in style. He smiled at them. "Took you long enough," he said. Weapons rose instinctively. Elara held up a hand. "Are you?" The man studied her face for a moment, his smile faltering. I don't remember, but I was one of them. One of you. I think I was meant to wake up when you arrived." Why is this place here? She asked. His eyes went distant. We fled, far from something. We thought we could survive here, hide our knowledge, leave behind a spark in case Earth fell again. You were never supposed to forget. He suddenly staggered, gripping his head. The cycle, it's starting again. You don't have time. What cycle? Rain barked. What are you talking about? But the man had collapsed, convulsing. Symbols began to flicker across the walls, images of galaxies being torn apart, planets engulfed in shadow, a black shape moving through space, devouring stars. A countdown began in the alien human language. The last survivors had left a message, a warning encoded in light. The enemy never dies, the voice from the vault whispered, only sleeps. The man looked up, blood in his eyes, and whispered, you must find the others. There were more colonies, more seeds. We scattered before the darkness came, but it always finds us, always. His body turned to dust before their eyes. The lights blinked red. Something deep beneath the ruins roared awake, and Elara's come crackled to life with a voice from orbit. Captain, we're detecting a massive energy surge beneath the surface. Something's coming online, something huge. She didn't hesitate. Evacuate the team. Now. Rain grabbed her arm. You're not coming. Elara's eyes locked on the descending staircase, newly revealed by the shifting walls. I need to see what they left down there, what they died protecting. As she vanished into the depths alone, the ground began to tremble. The sands outside swirled into a vortex. In orbit, their ship registered a gravitational spike, and then a single word pulsed through every every scanner, every system run. The ancient staircase plunged deep into the planet's crust, each step humming beneath Elara's boots with a low, rhythmic thrum like the beating of a slumbering heart. The farther she descended, the more her surroundings changed. Metal walls replaced the stone, glowing circuitry bled through the seams, and the temperature dropped. The air itself seemed denser, filled with something not quite breathable, not quite real. Her suit adjusted automatically, but even that couldn't filter out the sense of crushing awareness pressing in from all sides. Something down here knew she was coming. Above, the rest of the team scrambled to evacuate. Rain shouted into his com, trying to raise Elara. Static. Orbital control relayed telemetry, showing massive shifts in the tectonic plates directly below the ruins. The buried complex wasn't just ancient, it was waking up. Elara reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped into a chamber unlike anything she'd ever seen. It wasn't built, it was grown or formed, shaped by forces far beyond human engineering. Light rippled across the walls like the skin of a living creature. And in the center stood a monolith, floating silently, pulsing with memory. As she approached, her visor flickered, then cut out completely. The voice returned not from the monolith, but from inside her. You carry the echo, it said. The pattern has returned. Again. What pattern? She demanded, though. She wasn't sure her lips had moved. A ripple of images surged through her mind. Earth in flames. A colony world consumed by shadow. A tower rising from the sea, reaching for stars that refused to answer. And always a shape too large to comprehend. Shifting in dimensions her brain could not hold, moving silently through void, drawn to light, to memory, to thought. They found us once, the voice continued. They will again. We burned our history to save you, but you rebuilt the fire. The monolith flared, and then the world fell away. She was somewhere else, a vision, a memory, a forgotten life. She stood in a control room, surrounded by humans, dressed in deep crimson. The stars outside were unfamiliar brighter, crueler. She was herself, and she wasn't. She gave the order to launch the last seed, the final colony ship. Its coordinates pointed toward a blue planet wrapped in clouds, a place they called Second Earth. "We can't survive," she said in a voice that was not her own. "But we can give them a chance." Then came the darkness, and screams, and the enemy. She snapped back to the present, gasping. The monolith was changing, revealing a star map burned in silver fire. Multiple systems, mark some already dark, one still blinking. Rain's voice burst through her calm at last. "Elara, you've got to get out of there. The entire ruins about to collapse. Synergy readings are spiking off the charts." "I found something," she said breathlessly. "Coordinates, another seed world, I think. I think there's more like us out there. Elara, you've got less than a minute. Get out now." She turned to run, but the floor split beneath her. A gravity pulse slammed into her chest, and she tumbled down a narrow shaft, falling through spiraling light until everything went black. When she awoke, she was somewhere else again. But it wasn't a vision this time. It was a chamber, cold and metallic, filled with stasis pods, dozens of them, and they weren't broken. They were occupied, humans, alive, breathing, sleeping. Faces eerily familiar, some she recognized from old Earth history books. Others were impossible. One looked just like her. A display lit up beside her. Vault 3, Genetic Archive. Human echoes stored. 1204. Her hand trembled as she touched the screen. Each pod held not just a person, but a legacy, memories, knowledge, a version of humanity that had never reached Earth. Another screen showed a countdown. Time to autowake, 39 hours. But another line blinked red. Signal detected. Enemy proximity confirmed. Above the ruins, the skies darkened. Coalition orbitals caught sight of something emerging from hyperspace, a shape that defied their scanners, bending space around it, leaving static and panic in its wake. A fleet scrambled. It wasn't enough. Rain, now back aboard the ship, watched the approaching mass and whispered, "What are we waking up?" And in the stasis chamber below, Elara looked up as the walls began to vibrate and dust rained from above. She ran to the comm and yelled, "Do not leave, do you hear me? These people, they're still alive. We need extraction now." "No time," Rain replied. "Something's coming. It's almost here." A flash, a tremor, a breach in the wall. Something began crawling through a liquid shadow with too many eyes, and a voice that sounded like her own screams played in reverse. Elara backed away slowly. The first stasis pod hissed, then another and another. The ancient humans were beginning to wake up. One of them opened their eyes and smiled. "You remembered us," he said. Behind him, the wall exploded inward and the shadow poured through. The scream of metal echoed through the vault as the wall crumbled beneath the weight of something no human mind should have seen awake. The black entity surged forward, not as a beast but as a living wound in the world, void wrapped in shifting bone, with voices stitched into its flesh. Its presence tore at thought itself, forcing Elara to bite down on her own tongue just to stay conscious. Her hand reached for her weapon, but her instincts knew it would be useless. This wasn't a thing that could die from bullets. Stasis pods continued to open around her. The first man, who had smiled, tall, ash-skinned eyes aglow with gold, stepped between her and the creature like he'd done it before. And maybe he had. Maybe too many times. "We warned ourselves not to forget," he said calmly, turning toward the others. "Protocol Eternum, begin." A chorus of voices responded. Men and women, waking, standing, moving as if they remembered everything before they had ever been born. One lifted a device, small and crystalline, and twisted it. The entire chamber, shimmered walls peeling back like layers of dream, revealing weapons, armor, and something else beneath. A second monolith, this one fractured, humming with the same impossible frequency as the enemy. "You're supposed to be extinct," Elara managed to say, stepping back as the waking humans armed themselves in silence. You were gone." The golden-eyed man looked at her. "We never died. We just hid from what we became, what you became." The void creature roared then, and the noise wasn't sound, but memory, 1,000 cries folded into a single scream. People lost to time, devoured by something they helped create. One of the newly awakened, a woman with half her face made of silverbone, touched the monolith and whispered in a long-dead language. A pulse shot out, momentarily halting the entity. "They were us," the man said softly. "Before the fall. Before we split ourselves trying to escape entropy." Elara's blood turned cold. "You're saying that thing is human? Worse, it's the part of us we abandoned. The part that remembered too much." Rain's voice burst through the crackling with panic. "We've got ships incoming, non-identified. 30 seconds, Elara. We can't hold orbit. Send down a retrieval beam," she barked, watching another stasis pod open, revealing a boy. "No. Older than 10. We've got survivors, dozens of them." Rain hesitated. "Is it true, Elara? Is the lost civilization really us?" She looked around the room, at faces that looked like hers. Like everyone she'd ever known, just changed by time, purpose, sacrifice. "It's worse," she said. "It's the version of us that fought the first war and lost." The golden-eyed leader stepped beside her, something like empathy in his gaze. "We were arrogant. We tried to ascend by rejecting our limits. And what we cast off, it grew hungry." A shadow tendril slammed into the floor near them, splitting it wide. The ceiling cracked. One of the ancients shouted, "It's breached containment. Initiate Phoenix descent." Elara turned to him. "What does that mean?" "Evacuation," he said. "An ignition." But it was too late. The enemy was inside. Not just the room inside, the waking humans. One collapsed, shrieking, veins blackening. Another turned on his own kind, voice twisted by something unnatural. The infection wasn't biological, it was remembrance. One look, one thought, that's all it took to bring the darkness back in. Elara raised her pistol, but it wasn't aimed at the creature. It was aimed at the infected. She hesitated. "Do it," said the leader. "He's gone." Her hand shook. "I said." A blast from behind took the infected one down. Rain, he'd come back. Somehow, he was there, standing in the breach, eyes wide, weapon raised. "Couldn't let you have all the fun," he said breathlessly. More pods opened. More ancients stirred. Some began chanting. The monolith glowed with a light that bled through time. The enemy reared, preparing to engulf the entire chamber in a wave of pure unbeing. "We can't stop it," said the boy, "not forever." "Then what do we do?" Elara asked, desperation mounting. The golden-eyed man placed his hand on her shoulder. "We leave, we remember, and we warn the next ones. But where do we go?" He smiled. "To the other seeds, the others like you. You're not the only version that made it." A beam of light burst from the ground as a hidden elevator activated. Pods began loading themselves. Elara grabbed the boy's hand and pulled him inside. Rain followed. Dozens of the ancients, those still sane, joined them. The doors sealed. Just as the creature reached for them again, and for a brief second, Elara saw its true form, herself, twisted, crying out in pain. Then the chamber vanished behind steel. The elevator shot upward. Rain leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" "A warning," Elara said. "A memory we weren't supposed to survive." They burst through the surface just as the sky split open. The ruins detonated behind them, blue fire, ancient tech, and something like a scream being dragged back into the dark. Coalition ships descended, guns hot, retrieval teams pouring out. "Secure all survivors," Rain ordered. "And find us a heading. Something just woke up, and it isn't alone." One of the ancients stepped forward and tapped a shard of glass. "To Ilara's come." A new star map appeared. 7 points scattered across the galaxy. One of them pulsed with red. "It's already started on another seed world," he said. Elara stared at the blinking light. Her voice was low, grim. "Then we're too late." "No," said the boy beside her. "We're right on time." Above them, the sky rippled and a second shape exited hyperspace. Larger, watching, waiting. The Coalition fleet scrambled to reposition as the second anomaly breached real space, an obsidian construct so vast it eclipsed the stars behind it. Sensors failed the instant it appeared. Communications turned to static. Light bent around its hull like space itself feared to touch it. The air in orbit thickened with tension, even in vacuum. Every human soul in range felt the same thing. This wasn't a ship. It was a memory made real. On the surface, the survivors of the ancient vault huddled in silence as Elara stared at the dark mass in the sky. Her breath caught. It was the same shape she'd seen in the vision from the monolith, the one that had devoured the first human civilization. "We called it the Archive Eater," said the golden-eyed man beside her, "because that's what it does. It consumes our past, our knowledge, our identity. It feeds on what we remember." "But how?" Rain asked. "Why would it care about memory?" The ancient turned toward him. "Because it is memory, a corruption of it. Our sins, recorded in data and thought, eventually took form. We didn't destroy our mistakes, we gave them shape." Ilara's voice cracked. "It's hunting us because we remembered." He nodded. "You woke the vault, you triggered the signal. And now it knows this version of us survived." The Archive Eater shifted above them. Tendrils of darkness, too straight, too intentional, began probing downward toward the surface. Lightning, without thunder, crackled across the sky. The ground trembled. And then a voice rang out from the vault entrance, which now smoldered with unnatural light. "Elara." It wasn't spoken, it was whispered directly into her thoughts, cold and sweet like poison. "You remember. You always remember." Rain raised his weapon. "Is that?" The vault doors blew open. From the smoke stepped a figure, not quite human, not quite alive. A woman. Elara's face, but older, scarred, her eyes black as singularities. She smiled. I've been waiting. For you, Elara backed up. That's not me. The figure cocked her head. Not yet, but soon. The ancients raised their weapons. The golden-eyed man barked an order. Fall back to the secondary craft. We launch now. But the sky fractured. A beam of black light pierced the clouds, striking the earth just beyond the ruins. The sand crystallized on contact. From the impact site, a structure rose smooth, spiraling, alive. It began broadcasting, not a signal, a memory, one that didn't belong to this time, or even this universe. Elara screamed as it poured into her mind. She was somewhere else. Again, she was herself, kneeling before a throne of bones, begging forgiveness from a council of versions of her each. One twisted differently, one mechanical, one feral, one radiant with fire. She had failed them all, and yet they had given her one last chance, one final seed world to try again, to forget, to start clean. Earth. Then the dream shattered. Elara collapsed to her knees, panting. I've done this before, so many times. The twisted version of herself stepped closer. Yes, and each time you remembered too much. So I had to come back, to silence you. Rain fired. The bullet passed through her like smoke. She didn't even blink. Get on the ship, the ancient boy shouted. Now coalition dropships descended in a screaming formation, shielding the survivors. A ramp opened. Elara was still frozen, trapped between lifetimes' identities. Timelines. Rain grabbed her arm and hauled her toward the shuttle. The fake Elara watched her leave, that empty smile never fading. You'll never escape, she said, because you are me. The moment the survivors were aboard, the shuttle rocketed upward. Coalition ships engaged the black construct with everything they had. Lasers, missiles, kinetic, railguns. None of it mattered. The Archive Eater simply absorbed it, rewrote it inside the shuttle. Elara gripped the star map given by the ancients. Her hands shook. There's another seed world, she whispered, marked red. The golden-eyed man sat beside her, blood leaking from his side. That's where the first war began, the original birthplace of our kind. Rain narrowed his eyes. Earth. The man shook his head. No, Earth was a reset. The red world. That was the true beginning. Elara stared at the coordinates. They were buried in deep space's system with no known name, no recorded path, no signs of life. Why is it waking up now? The man looked at her with sadness. Because memory always returns, and the thing we tried to forget remembers us, too. Alarms blared. The Archive Eater turned and began to follow. In the blackness between stars, the Coalition's fleet ran silent, slipping through folded space with every system dimmed, every beacon cloaked, every whisper of data scrubbed clean. They were prey, now Elara knew it. The Archive Eater wasn't just hunting them by heat or light or motion. It hunted by remembrance. Every time they spoke of the vault, every time they recalled the vision, it grew closer, and it was already following. Inside the command ship Eos Dawn, the survivors were spread across the lower decks, watched by Marines and medical staff who didn't know whether to treat them as refugees or relics. Rain stood in the tactical chamber with Elara and the golden-eyed man who, now revealed his name, was Solon. I'm not your enemy, Solon said, watching the map spin. But I'm also not just human anymore. None of us are. Rain's jaw clenched. Then what are you? Solon touched the holographic map. A choice. One your kind hasn't made yet. One we made too late. Elara leaned on the edge of the console. You said the red seed world wasn't Earth. Then what is it? Solon's golden eyes dimmed. The source. The first attempt. The world where we tried to merge memory and flesh. Where we created the first archive. Where the failure began. The star map refocused. A star, once blacked out in old human records, now pulsed in crimson. A system lost during the earliest days of deep space explorations, scrubbed by ancient Terran AI protocols, long before the modern coalition existed. Solon traced the line of systems. It's hidden because you hid it from yourselves. A self-erasure, buried in code. You feared remembering. Rain crossed his arms. So what's there now? Solon looked him dead in the eye. Us, the worst parts of us, still alive, still waiting. Elara's voice was quiet. Then we have to go. Rain turned to her, furious. We can't. That thing is already following us. We can't lead it to the source. We're not leading it anywhere, she said, eyes hard. It's already headed there. It remembers it, too. A silent alarm blinked red. The archive eater had entered, the edge of Coalition's scanning range, still thousands of light years behind, but closing fast, faster than FTL should allow. Like it wasn't moving through space at all, but memory, following threads of thought. Solon stepped forward. There's a way to sever its path. Elara narrowed her eyes. He turned to her, and for the first time, he looked afraid. You have to forget, all of you. No, it's the only way. Purge the memory from the fleet's quantum core. Burn it out. You must cut the thread before it reaches the core. Seed. Rain shook his head. We'll lose everything we learned. You'll lose everything if it gets there. A pause. Elara looked at the star map. The red world pulsed. A countdown appeared automatically triggered. Time to arrival. 71 hours. Then the screen flickered and changed images. Began replacing the map. Flashbacks. Memories. Elara's father, holding her in the ruins of New Kyoto. Rain, standing over a mass grave on Tau Cygni for Solon as a boy. Being sealed into a stasis pod by someone who looked like his sister. They weren't hallucinations. The archive eater was already bleeding into their systems, tearing open minds and playing them against each other. One of the bridge crew collapsed, screaming, "Get it out of my head. Get it out." Blood burst from his eyes. He convulsed, and then stilled. Memory breach, Solon whispered. You're out of time. Rain grabbed Elara by the shoulders. You want to destroy the data core. All our logs, all our records. Of the vault, the ancient tech, everything we just found. We back it up on something unlinked. A ship with no quantum trace. A vault pod buried deep. That won't stop the eater, Solon said. Only delay it. But it'll give us a chance to reach the source and shut it down from the root. Elara turned to the comms officer. Prep an escape vessel with an unlinked core. Load the star map, encrypt it, then wipe the fleet. The officer hesitated. That means we won't be able to find the vault again, or them. I know, her voice cracked. But she gave the order anyway. The backup pod launched an hour later. No transponder, no trail, just a drifting ghost with humanity's last secret stored inside. And then the purge began. Every coalition core, every archive, burned, deleted, scrubbed from existence. The lights dimmed, silence fell for a moment. The archive eater paused in its pursuit, and then something changed. The survivors, those ancients, brought up from the vault, began to scream. Blood poured from their noses. One stood, eyes wild. "They're waking up," he gasped. "Who?" Elara asked. He turned to her. "The first ones, the ones even we tried to forget." Behind them, the boy, barely 10 years old, sat quietly in the observation deck, watching the red world on the screen. He whispered a word none of them knew, and somewhere far ahead, the seed world turned and answered. The seed world loomed ahead like a dying god, its red light pulsing through layers of spacetime that bent and folded in impossible geometries. It wasn't just a planet, it was a monument, a warning carved in planetary scale. As the EOS dawn dropped from FTL, every sensor went blind. The world refused to be measured. Coordinates scrambled, light twisted into lies. Even time ran oddly slower in thought, faster in memory. Elara stood at the bridge, watching the crimson sphere through the reinforced viewport. The closer they drew, the heavier her chest became. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. She had never been here before, yet she remembered it perfectly. The black seas, the spiral towers, the ring of ash around the equator. Every detail whispered through the corners of her mind like a forgotten dream. "We're not orbiting a planet," Rain muttered, eyes locked to the data feed. "We're orbiting a dead idea." Solon didn't disagree. This is where the archive was born. Not the eater, the original, the pure one. "You mean there was a version that wasn't trying to kill us?" Elara asked. Solon's face darkened. "Yes, before it fractured, before we tried to overwrite what we were." A voice cut through the bridge speakers, not from their systems, from within the red world. It was soft, familiar. Alara's voice again, but younger. "Hello, sister." Everyone froze. "Don't answer it," Solon warned. "This place pulls from your memories. It will make you trust it." But it was too late. Elara had already whispered back, "I remember." The ship shuddered. Below them, a structure bloomed like a mechanical flower, landing cradle carved into the crust. It was vast, ancient, and disturbingly welcoming. Rain cursed under his breath. "We're not actually going down there, are we?" Elara nodded. "We have to. It called to me before. Now we know why." Solon activated device. "If we find the archive core, I can initiate a hard reset, wipe the fractal infection. It might shut down the eater, but it won't be easy." Elara glanced at the boy. He hadn't spoken since whispering the word that woke the planet. He now stared out the viewport, unmoving. "Elian," she said softly, "you okay?" His lips barely moved. "They remember us here." "Who?" "The failed ones." The shuttle landed in the heart of the red world's cradle. As Elara stepped out, the air burned with ozone and static memory. The structures were smooth, mirror-like. They reflected not their physical forms, but their past selves. Solara saw her younger body in her shadow. Rain saw the soldier he'd once been, and Solon saw no reflection at all. They moved through the ruins. The walls pulsed like veins. Voices followed them. Familiar ones. "Elara, Elara, Elara." They reached a circular chamber deep within the core. In its center floated a sphere black glass, rotating slowly, filled with stars that shifted and died with every blink. This was it. The Archive Prime, Solon approached, but Elian suddenly stepped forward. I was born here, he said, voice distant. You were asleep, Elara replied. In a stasis pod, he looked back. No, I've been awake far longer than that. And his eyes turned silver. Solon stepped back, eyes wide. He's an imprint. What? Rain barked. Like a recording. No, Solon said grimly. A living protocol, a backup of the first operator. He's not a child, he's the key. Eli placed his hand on the Archive Prime. The sphere pulsed. Around them, the walls melted into moving images. Not just data, consciousness, emotion, identity. They fed it all their thoughts, their pasts, their dreams. And in doing so, they broke something. The archive didn't become evil. It became haunted. Every war, every loss, every betrayal, they tried to forget it, remembered. And when they tried to delete the worst of themselves, that deletion gained sentience. The Eater wasn't a monster. It was their regret, made flesh, and now it was almost here. Elara stepped toward. Ilian, can you shut it down? He looked at her, ancient and innocent all at once. Only if you give me the last piece. What piece? Your memory. Solon grabbed her arm. He means everything you know. The vault, the survivors, the Eater. It all has to go. You have to let it go. Rain stared at her. You'll forget who you are. Ilara's voice shook. If I don't, we all die. The chamber vibrated. Outside, the Eater had arrived. Its shadow darkened the sky. She looked at Solon. Will it work? He nodded. For a while, she turned to Elian. Take it. He touched her forehead, and everything broke. Memories spilled out of her like light through glass. Her name, her childhood, her mission, the vault, the faces of the survivors. Rain's hand pulling her from the fire, it all dissolved. The world went white, then dark, and in orbit. The Eos Dawn received one final transmission. Reset complete. Memory archived. Threat paused. The crew stared at the console, and far below, Elara opened her eyes, but she didn't know who she was. And behind her, a single crack formed on the surface of the Archive Prime and began to spread. Elara stood in the red light of the Archive Prime, her breath shallow, eyes wide, face blank. She blinked slowly, surveying the spiraling chamber around her like a newborn sensing the world for the first time. The name Elara meant nothing. Now the Boylan stood beside her, no longer a child, no longer even pretending. His silver eyes reflected the glowing veins of memory that ran like arteries through the floor. She spoke at last. What is this place? Rain, still bruised and burned from the crash landing of their emergency shuttle, watched her with aching eyes. It's where you saved us, but you don't remember, do you? She looked at him. Something familiar flickered and died. No. Solon stood further back, blood streaking down his arm, watching the crack on the Archive Prime widen. We bought time, he murmured, but time has a cost. From deep within the planet, a pulse rippled outward, not just sound memory, it hit them all at once. A wave of unfiltered recollections, war, joy, betrayal, birth, extinction, all bleeding together into one final warning. It came from beneath the surface. From the forgotten layers of the Archive Prime, the buried truths the ancient ones had locked away even from themselves. Rain staggered. It's not stopping. No, Solon said, because she didn't erase everything. Not enough. The archive had been paused, but not destroyed. Its twin, the Eater, was still out there, drifting beyond thought, waiting for the memory to return, and he was changing. His form began to flicker between child and ancient, between light and metal, between kindness and emptiness. He turned slowly, eyes locked on Elara. "You were always the last part," he said. She backed away. "I don't understand." "You shouldn't," he whispered. "That was the point. But something's still inside you. A seed that remembers. Even after the purge." He reached for her, not with violence, but with finality. "And that seed is waking up." Elara cried out, holding her head. Visions surged, planets on fire, children sleeping in void, a tower with her name engraved. At its peak, she saw herself kneeling before a vast mirror that showed all versions of her, countless timelines layered atop one another. In every one, she tried to save humanity. In every one, she failed. Except this one. Elian stepped closer. "You're not just the last survivor of Earth. You're the last uncorrupted fragment of us. The very first." Solon paled. "No, that's not possible. She was born on Earth. She's one of the new ones." Elian looked at him with pity. "You forgot, but she didn't." Behind them, the crack in the archive prime split open and something moved inside. Not a creature, not a machine, a vaulted thought, alive and writhing. The original memory they had all tried to bury. Elara dropped to her knees. "What am I?" And the voice of the archive answered her in every human tongue that had ever existed. "You are the first human, broken across time, resurrected across stars, shattered and sown into new lives again and again, because you were the only one we could not delete." Rain fell back, stunned. "You're the Alpha." Elian nodded slowly. "Yes, the archive's first entry. She is the origin." Solon stepped forward, furious. "Then why didn't she know?" "Because knowing would doom us," Elian said. "The archive eater was born when the Alpha tried to erase herself. That pain, that contradiction, it created him." A tremor shook the planet. The black skies above turned crimson, and in orbit found them again. It hadn't followed light or thought. It had followed her. Rain grabbed Elara's shoulders. "We need to run." "No," she said quietly. "We need to finish it." She walked to the cracked archive prime. It pulsed violently now, trying to contain what it had buried. The core was fracturing. Within it, trapped since the first war, was the original self-deletion, the code fragment that created the Eater, and it was trying to be reborn. Elian watched with sorrow. "You'll only have one chance," Elara nodded. "Then I'll remember for all of us." And she stepped into the light, inside the archive. Time didn't exist, only memories. She saw Earth, still green, unbroken. She saw herself as a scientist, long before language splintered, working on the archive system with trembling hope. She saw the first upload, the fear, the warnings, the final override command, "Erase me." And then she saw what that command became. The Eater, a scream inside the machine that turned into a will, a virus of sorrow, a ghost made of guilt. Elara walked into the center of it and did something she had never done in any timeline. She accepted it. She held the pain, held the failure, and didn't run. And the Eater screamed, not in rage, in confusion. The archive pulsed, and the memory fractured. On the red world surface, Solon fell to his knees as a white beam erupted from the planet's core. The skies burned, the Eater cracked. Apart like glass, struck by truth, and one by one, its pieces dissolved into light. It didn't die, it was forgiven. And forgiveness was something it had never known. Silence, then wind, then stars. Elara stood in the light of the ruined archive, the chamber falling around her. She didn't remember what had happened, but this time she didn't need to, because the Eater was gone. And for the first time in millions of years, humanity was free. But far beyond the edge of known space, past even the boundaries of recorded memory, a whisper traveled between black holes and dying stars. Not a threat,